Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 58 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is founder and host of self-improvement podcast Next Level University, Kevin Palmieri. We talk through Kevin's story and how he made a successful podcast from being beyond rock bottom, the importance of following your passions, and what success truly means to the individual. If you'd like to support the show, head over to the About section where you'll find a link to my Linktree. It has everything from social media pages and merch to the website and much more. Like, share, follow, comment, or leave a rating. Every little bit goes a long way, and I truly appreciate it. Now, here's the interview. Kevin, welcome to Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show tonight. How are you doing?
I am living the dream, my friend. I am excited to chat. We had a very short conversation behind the scenes, but I feel like you and I are two peas in a pod, and I'm excited to see where our conversation takes us.
Man, I absolutely love to hear that. And I'm so excited as well. Been very much looking forward to this conversation. So yeah, let's just get into it. So you are the CSO, founder, and host of Next Level University, a self-improvement podcast with a massive, massive global reach, which is an incredible feat. But what I'm fascinated in is your backstory in getting into this. If you would like to just sort of start us off from there and how you kind of came about into the podcast.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the kind words and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
I was somebody who was convinced I was never going to be successful at anything in life. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. We didn't have a lot of money. I didn't go to college. It just seemed like it was trending in a not so positive direction. I did a lot of job hopping, dead end job. In my early 20s, I got an opportunity to work in an industry called weatherization. So we would go into schools and large buildings, and it was our job to make them more energy efficient. Easiest description. Since we were working on state or government contracts, I was getting anywhere from 60 to 120 US dollars per hour, which for me was like, I can't even believe this is real. This isn't real. This couldn't possibly be real. So once that happened, I felt like I had turned everything around and now I was going to actually be successful. So if you fast forward a few years, I had this high paying job. When I was 25, my girlfriend was a model. I was getting ready to compete in a bodybuilding show, so I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be in. Sports car, great friends, new apartment, all the stuff. But internally, I was miserable. And it got to the point where my girlfriend left me, and she said, I was going to leave you sooner, but I was afraid if I did, you might kill yourself.
Oh, wow.
And I had that moment of, how the heck did I get here? How did we get so far down in what seemed like such a quick amount of time? I didn't learn my lesson there, unfortunately. I convinced myself that I had to go make more money, and I think more money will fix the rest of the problems. I just haven't made enough yet. So I grinded my face off for the next year. I ended up making $100,000 at 26. And I remember getting to the end of the year. I opened up my final pay stub and nothing changed internally.
Yeah.
And I had this really challenging moment of awareness where I said, for most of my life, I've lived unconsciously. I have no idea why I do anything. I have no freaking clue. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I did what any young man would do. I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And that was me dipping my toe into adding value, telling my story, trying to help people. And yeah, I fell in love with it. In 2017, I started and I fell in love with it. And that was my introduction to podcasting.
I love that. Yeah. Like, I think it goes to show that podcasting is a great outlet for just getting your thoughts out there, even at the very, very least. And like, obviously it's a great outlet for storytelling. And like, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because I mean, I personally believe that doing podcasts like this is a very good way to hear people's stories where people might not have heard that story, and it can resonate with people in a way that it's like, oh wow, I kind of feel like this too. Like, it's, I'm glad I'm not just me. God's not just me, and Yeah, like it's incredible. And your podcast then, Next Level University, that was it's very much about self-improvement, taking your own personal experiences and sort of just focusing on the positives, mental health, rebuilding.
Mhm.
What more can you tell us then about the podcast itself?
So we do an episode every day. We have 2,180 episodes, I think, as of
Wow.
today. And if so, we're very much lead by example, walk the talk, walk the talk, walk the
Yeah.
talk. If I'm going to tell you that you can get a little bit better every day, I want to be there leading the charge to help you get a little bit better every day. So, our main focus is to help people achieve their own unique level of success through personal development and self improvement. Because I think there's a lot of podcasts out there that talk about how to be successful,
Yeah.
but a lot of that's like the external, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. We talk about the internal, we talk about the external, we talk about relationships, we talk about wealth, we talk about fitness. I want to be a really well rounded human being. And that's what we want the podcast to be for high achievers and peak performers who want it all. That's really what we aspire to deliver.
Yeah. And I love that as well because especially you touched on the point of success. And I think even something that I've learned through podcasting is that success has a very, very broad definition, almost to the point it's actually a subjective term.
Mm.
Because I think, well, like you put it, internal and external success. Somebody's internal success could just be they launch a podcast. Well, there you go. They launch the podcast. That's a success for them.
Mhm.
They hit their first 100 plays. Then that's a massive success. And then obviously you have the external thing like wealth, fame, if you want, and however whatever you strive to be. Not quite as far as in a materialistic way, but you have that kind of status, as it
Yeah.
were. But then the internal things, it's like even just to some, it goes as deep as just getting out of bed in the morning is a success. If you can get out
Mhm.
of bed in the morning, then you have already beaten whatever may be going on in your head. And I think when you sort of break it down into how broad that definition of success is, it's incredibly eye opening.
I think the term subjective is a really good way to put it because what you want and what I want are probably very different because our values are different and our
Yeah.
beliefs are different and our priorities are different. And I think we're in a really important time where we see what looks like success,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know what the journey to that success actually was. And the way I always put it is I work with a lot of podcasters. I talk to a lot of podcasters. And I say this to them. I could give you the keys to my seat right now. And I'm telling you, you don't want them
Yeah.
because you would have to give up time with your family. You'd have to give up so many things that you probably value maybe more than I do. So I think, yeah, that's a really important piece of success. It doesn't have to look good to everybody else. It has to feel good to you. That's the
Oh,
way to
yeah.
do it.
Absolutely. Because and I kind of think we're in this kind of with the digital age that we're in, everybody's comparing themselves to other people
Yeah.
based on what they see on social media. And I think that's probably been the way for the last close to 20 years, I want to say. Like ever since I started using social media, I kind of feel like there has been that kind of element of comparison. But I think now that everything's all video, it seems to be like a lot more people like to sort of flash like their material
Yeah.
items and what they do. You always see these TikToks of people and with like looking out into the horizon of Dubai or something, and then that's like, oh yeah, I'm here. Where are you? Kind of thing. It's like, well, I'm happy sitting on my own sofa at home. Like, I mean, that's a success to me. I don't care if you're halfway across the world, man.
Well, I think so. This is what I say all the time. The algorithm rewards novelty.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So let's say 50 years ago, if you wanted to see somebody extremely attractive, you had to either turn on the TV or read a magazine or watch a movie or whatever it is. Now the algorithm will literally show you the most successful, the most in shape, the most attractive people on the planet that you might never see in person statistically.
Oh yeah.
But it just makes everything so accessible. And now you're comparing to things that are quite literally one in a million. And yeah, it is a weird time to be alive
I
for
think
sure.
so. Definitely.
Yeah.
Like it is one of those things that's like they're used like the internet and everything is used for better or for worse reasons. It's just on
Yeah.
how the algorithm can hook you in, and
Yes.
it's quite an interesting beast. So then on the topic of self improvement, so when you speak to people like on your podcast, do you find that like everybody's journey is different in terms of how they can self improve, or what they're maybe willing to do, or well, what their own personal successes are, what would be an improvement to them?
Yeah, so it starts from a place of understanding what your core values are,
Mhm.
what your core beliefs are, and how they may conflict with your core aspirations. That is the equation for redefining success for most people. Core values are what you value as a human being.
Mhm.
Core beliefs are what you believe about yourself and the world, and core aspirations are what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
If you believe in order to be a good parent, you must spend 7 hours a day with your child, that might directly conflict with I want to have the most important podcast ever of all time. It probably will.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. That's usually where we start. One of the things that really surprised me is I'm somebody who is afraid of failure. I do not like making mistakes. I don't like looking bad. I don't like getting rejected. I don't want to fail. I assumed everybody thought that way. There is a subset of people who are more afraid of success than they are failure.
Mhm.
And that has been a very interesting eye opener for me. So yeah, there everybody on the spectrum has their own stuff they're working through, because so much of what we're working through is childhood stuff, unresolved stuff that we didn't know was affecting us.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of us, we don't actually know what it's going to take to be the level of successful we want. So that's a whole nother present to unwrap. So simplest answer, everybody is different. And I think at the end of the day, self-belief, self-worth, and self-awareness are probably the most important three places to focus if we want to be more successful.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Like, and especially like self awareness and mindfulness, being in this exact present moment right now and aware of everything around you is it's probably one of the most important states that we could be in as people.
Mm.
And you mentioned, you being yourself being afraid of failure. So, what would your personal definition of failure be then?
It's definitely evolved, but in the beginning, it essentially was looking bad in front of others. That
Hmm.
was it. If I looked bad in front of other people, I was a failure, to the point where at one point in my strange journey of occupations, I went to the fire academy. I wanted to be a firefighter. I thought that's a great opportunity. Let me do this. I graduate, I go do my practical tests, I graduate, and I'm an on-call firefighter in the small town that I was born and raised in. First weekend, I have my pager and it goes off at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Get up out of bed. Here we go. This is what we've been training for. Run down to the station, get in my gear, jump on the engine, and we roll up to this car that's on fire in somebody's driveway. And I jump off, and the captain says, "Hey, Kevin, connect the 2.5 to the outlet." And Andy, I had no freaking clue what to do.
Oh no.
No clue. Throughout the entire fire academy, I always had questions. I just never had the courage to ask. I
Hmm.
was afraid. A lot of these people were already on departments. Their mothers or fathers were on the fire department. I felt like an outsider. So, quite literally, that was the last day I felt like I could even be a firefighter. I left shortly thereafter. Me not wanting to look like a failure has created so many failures in my life. So many. So, anytime I looked bad, that was a failure to me.
That's a really interesting point, because that's something that I've been thinking about quite a lot recently myself, in terms of having questions to ask, but the fear of looking bad because you don't know the answer, because you feel like you should know the answer. And I think it's a really tough thing to admit, but like it is just okay to not know. Like
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, because I know I know it's quite cliche, but you do hear this from like, I mean, I hear this from a lot of speakers as well, where chances are if you don't ask this question, somebody else also isn't going to ask the question. They probably have the same question. And but I would love to know where this stems from, because it is such a common thing globally that people think that if I ask a question, I'm going to look dumb. Like, but that's just not the case. I mean, because how you absorb knowledge depends on so many different things. Whether it just be a case of maybe you missed a day, or maybe you didn't hear something, maybe it's to do with levels of interest in what you're being told, because I know for a fact myself, like if I'm not 100% interested in something, it might not go in as easy as if I'm interested in something. And it got to the point, I think I was in work recently, like a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to ask this question here. It might sound day one, but I actually don't care. And
Mm.
but it's quite interesting, because obviously I think everybody has that sort of fear. And do you find you come across like a lot of people like on a self-improvement journey who have that kind of same rationale about themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from when you're young and especially in school.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask a dumb question, it's like the end of the world because everybody is like, "Oh, that's dumb." And then that becomes your reputation, right? I think we forget how serious high school felt
Oh yeah.
when we're later in life. I mean, there are people that did certain things one time and that became their reputation. So I think that's one of the big reasons why people fear it. And if you've ever asked a question to somebody who's negative, it shakes the foundation on which you believe people will respond. So
Yeah.
whoever you ask that question to, if they answered in a great way, hopefully that rebuild belief in you that you can ask that question and feel safe to do it. So I think that's a really big piece. School is a big piece. And then parents. If
Yeah.
you asked your mom or your dad, "Hey, what does this do?" and they said, "You're so stupid. How do you not know that?" I'm going to lock that up. I know now questions are bad. So, yeah, I think it stems from not being enough, not feeling
Mhm.
enough, not feeling competent. I think that's a big piece. Or on the opposite end, why do you always ask so many questions? Like, can't you just let things be the way they are? We want to get through class. Don't freaking ask questions.
Mm.
The more questions you ask, the longer we stay. So anything you've been punished for, you're probably going to avoid because it leads to pain.
Yeah. It's so interesting what we hold on to as people from the
Yeah.
past, and like things that you might not even necessarily realize. Like, because when you said, as soon as you said school there, I kind of was thinking, of course, because maybe I've just blocked out my entire school life out of my mind. I don't know. I don't know. It feels like a lifetime ago at this point, but yeah. But that makes you realize kids are cruel, like, aren't they? Like, when you look
Yeah.
back and like how easy it was to get a reputation for something. And like the crazy thing about it is you may hold on to this for the longest time, but at the end of the day you're probably going to be the only person who remembers that.
Mm.
And that's kind of like almost as painful as the fact that these things happened. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Somebody called me Four Eyes the first day I wore glasses. I never wanted to wear glasses again. It's like that stuck with me for so long. I have them somewhere.
Um,
I wear them occasionally now, but
yeah.
it is you just forget. I think it's so easy to forget where pieces of your identity came from. It's like I don't know where that came from. I've just been running that for the last 20 years, and
Yeah.
now that's normal. And
Oh
now we have
yeah.
to uncondition that.
For sure. It's actually kind of funny you say that about the story about the glasses, because something very similar happened to me. My my first day of school 20 years ago, and I had just moved countries. I just moved from England to Ireland, and it was like I didn't know anybody, so new school, completely new environment, and I was wearing my uniform, but I wore like a grey sort of woolen jumper underneath my blazer. And we were told back when buying the uniforms that was part of it. And oh my god, the looks that I got from people, the comments that people made, and this was like 11-year-old kids, right? All the comments that people made. So it was just like, okay, lunchtime. The sweatshirt came off, went right into my bag, never worn it again. And
Yeah.
for the next maybe 5 years, people still made comments and jokes about that. Like, oh, remember on the first day of first year you came in wearing the jumper, and I was like, get over it. And then and to be honest, I think this kind of added a nice sort of bit of closure for me in the most ironic sense of the word. But in my final year of high school, everybody started wearing gray jumpers. and like they were just I was just like, and like I remember turning to someone and said, "Remember all of the crap you gave me for the longest time about doing that, and now you're doing that some years later." And they just, and I swear to God, they just turned to me and goes, "Yeah, so who cares?"
You set the trend. You were too early. You were too early.
And like, it's one of those things. Like, it never overtly bothered me, but I found myself holding on to it for like, because I always remembered it, and I now look back at it now quite, because it's funny. But
Yeah.
at the time, it was like, it didn't completely bother me, but like if someone brought it up, it was like kind of like a big eye roll moment. But as
Yeah.
soon as then people started doing that, like some 7 years later, I felt like I got that kind of weird kind of closure, and I was just able to be like, oh, okay, no one's gonna make fun of me for this anymore. And coupled with the fact I was like an adult at the time anyway, so it was like, yeah, cool. But like, I mean, so based around that, and then the idea of closure, like, how important do you think then closure is in terms of a self-improvement journey?
I think it depends on what you're getting closure from. I think closure and acceptance
Mm-hmm.
are very similar.
Yeah.
In my mind, I had somebody reach out to me recently and they said, "Hey, how do you overcome an insecurity that you can't change about yourself?"
Mm,
And I was like, "Oh, what a great question."
yeah.
I'm 5'4". I'm not growing any tall. This is it for me, right? Now, I'm maxed out in the height department. I'm 5'4". That's my deepest insecurity. I can do one of two things. I guess you can do a bunch of things. One, I can wear lifts in my shoes, which is going to make the insecurity worse because who am I without my lifts? That's one.
Yeah.
Two, I can say to my wife, "Hey, you're not allowed to wear heels because if you wear heels, you're going to be taller than me in pictures." That's not going to do anything. Or three, I can say, I am 5'4". Honestly, kind of sucks. Not a huge fan of it. And let's list out the reality of that. I am less attractive to women at times, not all women, but some.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less respected by many men, and that's just the way it is. So I think that's a level of acceptance which then opens you up to be able to look at things from the reality. I don't want to distort myself because distortion does not help me grow through it. So, yeah, I think closure is really important from the aspect of, for a lot of us, I think closure is just acceptance of what has happened
Yeah.
and then the opportunity for us to do something with it. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, of course. I like that. I like that idea of the fact that acceptance is another sort of side of that, because like that's it actually reminds me of a conversation I had with another guest on the show where we talked about forgiveness, and essentially, if you're able to forgive, you don't even necessarily have to talk to the person who you need closure from, whatever be the situation. You just need to be able to sort of have that kind of forgiveness, and that kind of goes in line with the idea of acceptance as well. That's really interesting. Like, I've never ever looked at it that way. But I guess it makes sense because like I I kind of find like in my own personal sort of in my own life, like I've had people say, maybe make comments, unnecessary comments about like,
Mm.
like my facial hair, for example. It's like, oh, you look like this. What are you doing? It's like, I just get to the point now. It's just like, well, I'm not trying to impress you, so why do you care? How does this affect your life? Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like,
Well, I think getting to the point where there's two frames. One, when somebody makes that comment, you think, what does this mean about me?
mm,
Or you think, what does this mean about them?
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
And I'm willing to bet if you're more focused on what does this mean about them, you're probably going to be able to handle it better as long as it's not from a place of ego.
of course.
I went golfing recently and there was a bachelor party. My buddies and I went down to South Carolina. It's like a 2.5 hour plane flight. Awesome, great. And I was so nervous because I'm the only one who doesn't golf. The only one who doesn't golf. And this is like, we went to some nice courses. So I go in and I say, "Hey, I need to buy a glove. I'm getting blisters." And it's this old, crusty guy. Oh boy, here we go. He said, "All right, what kind of glove you want?" And I said, "This one's fine. The one I have is fine." He said, "That's a rain glove. It's not going to rain. You don't need a rain glove. You sure you want a rain glove?" And I said, "It's fine, man. I don't care. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me buy the rain glove."
Yeah.
He said, "Let's get your regular glove." I said, "Perfect." So he brings over the glove and he says, "All right, put this on your left hand and see if it fits." I put it on my left hand. I said, it fits. He said, all right, cool. That'll be $14. I said, I need a right-handed one. He said, why didn't you tell me you're a right-handed golfer? I said, I'm not. I just need 2 gloves. Andy, it got to the point where he literally looked at me and he might as well have just said, dude, you are an absolute idiot. It got to the point where he said, well, today's going to be an interesting day, isn't it? And I said, for you and me both, buddy, for you and me both. I just need the left one. I kind of expected it. One, honestly, it was kind of a dumb approach from me. I could have got more clarity before going in, but that dude is just a little bit crusty. He's just a crusty old man. So let me take the ownership for I could have approached it way better. And that place is literally known for having rude customer service. I expected that going in. Ownership, acceptance, and let's make sure we understand the part that the other person played as well.
Yeah, of course. And like that's a solid example, because a lot of these things are like a very much two-way street. Like how could situations be how could they have been handled better versus presented better in a way? Like, but I think accountability on both sides is an incredibly important thing, and especially when it does come to things like that, especially in your example of the golf shop, like one known for poor customer service, and then at the same time, like they're probably used to getting more seasoned golfers in, so they kind of it's very much a case of what you're getting kind of thing, in and out, and they're not poised to answer questions. Well, they are, but they just aren't willing. Which and it's it just fascinates me how maybe it's a generational thing, but like people kind of getting stuck in their ways, and just kind of like once they get to a point in life, it's kind of like settled in their ways. Like I feel it's quite a common expression when people get settled in their ways, and it's sometimes people don't feel like they necessarily need to improve.
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, you've gotten to a certain place in life and you feel that you're whatever, successful enough, evolved enough, right? But I think that's ego is a big piece of that. Ego, because I had that thought of if that guy walked into the gym and he asked me a question, I wouldn't be mean to him.
Yeah, of course.
I don't expect you to know. You probably haven't spent as much time in the gym as I have. How could you possibly know? But I think some people take out their frustrations of life on other people. And that's why in my mind, I try to think like he's probably not super happy, probably not super fulfilled. And here I come walking in all chipper, excited to play golf for the day. And, things didn't go the way either of us wanted. But I think to your point, if you take all the ownership, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I wore this blazer under here. I am an idiot. Now everybody thinks I'm an idiot versus why do you guys even care? Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. It's an interesting juggling act.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I'm sure you probably speak to some like very interesting people in terms of like their self-improvement journey and just sort of how they go about it themselves. And like, what would you say is probably one of the more interesting lessons that you've learned about sort of the nature of people when it comes to their own journeys?
Some of the people who, I'll put it this way, your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to harness it. So in the beginning, we would be doing these interviews with people and they would tell us our story. As an example, one of our, I would say he's a friend at this point, but he was in foster care and he jumped from foster house to foster house. At one point, he had to like chase chickens in the backyard to catch them, to eat them. Wow. Like, that's the only way he ate.
Yeah.
They put him in like a dog kennel. He had to lick the bottom of people's shoes. I mean, he was treated terribly.
Wow.
And he went on to play in the NFL. He's very successful speaker. He's an American Ninja Warrior, just a good human being. We would get to the end of an episode like that, and I would say to my co-host, we're probably never going to hear a story like that again. No way till next week. They had their own unique version of overcoming some massive level of adversity. Your adversity can be your advantage if you know how to turn it that way. Oh, yeah. That lesson always jumped out at me. And then I would say an unfortunate lesson that I learned that I try to be very honest and forthcoming with is almost nobody is who you think they are.
Mhm.
We've had some really amazing guests on that behind the scenes are completely different,
Yeah.
unfortunately. We've also had some guests on who behind the scenes are even better of people than I expected. I think probably more on the first hand,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but that's something that has given me a very unique perspective because I don't look at people the same on social media as I used to.
No.
I don't well, cool, you got the car. But I know what's going on behind the scenes because I talked to you about it. So it's given me a very important perspective to see behind the curtain. So I have an understanding of the truth.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because you look at people on social media and like I mean I used to think I was like a skeptic for this, but like I would look at the way people who conducted themselves on social media and my first thought would be you are not like that in real life. Like I don't care what anybody says, you are not like this in real life. And it is a shame though about how like not everybody is how they appear to be sometimes, especially when it comes to things like podcasting, because like with podcasting you want the authenticity to shine through. You want the storytelling to be on such a relatable level that like, you know, you kind of feel like you're taking something away from the person who's speaking. You want like that kind of organic nature rather than just kind of people there to kind of sell an idea almost or sell a story or something like that or whatever it may be. Like it is as you say, it's very unfortunate. But then like sometimes like you say it does fall under the opposite wing and it's like yeah,
Yes.
people can be a lot nicer. um like and I'm sure that probably does make when you interview guests probably not like would it make it challenging in a way, in a sense where there's a degree where you kind of have to take things at face value, but then at the same time, because you obviously are going to gather your own thoughts about the stories as well, right?
So we literally stopped interviewing people because I didn't want to be the guy who is constantly pushing back on people.
Okay.
We got to the place where we had one of the biggest people in the world in the fitness space on
Okay.
the fitness and nutrition space. We did the episode. Episode came out pretty good. I mean, it was a quality episode. And then after cameras off, we're not recording. The person was completely different. Just arrogant, egotistical.
Uh,
Just my business partner and I talked, and we said we're not going to release that, right? Nope, didn't release that. We had another one scheduled with somebody who's got millions and millions of followers. I was looking at their content. It was just like, this content is just not helping. It's not good for people. We canceled the podcast, and that was the last time we ever had one scheduled. So that was one of the issues where a lot of people, I want everybody to have the opportunity to tell their story,
yeah, of course.
but I also want the opportunity to make sure whatever principles we're sharing and takeaways we're giving are actually grounded in reality.
Oh yeah.
That's always, and I say this when I'm on podcasts as a guest, please fact check everything I say. Don't, just because I say it does not mean it's true and it's going to work for you. Please, 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 because I would want the same ability to do that as a podcast host. So yeah, I think it's important to draw your own conclusions, and I think it's important to be curious about what somebody says, and you don't have to be negative, but something along the lines of, okay, do you think there's anything else to why that happened as opposed to maybe the two reasons you listed? I didn't have enough courage to do that when we were having guests
Mm.
on 3 or 4 years ago. So I've grown a lot, and I wish I did because I think it would have made for a really cool conversation.
Yeah, of course. It is one of those things that where you're a podcast host where you're almost in a sort of particular situation where you want to avoid any form of controversy whatsoever, especially when you know you're just trying to hear somebody's story. Like you're just trying to hear somebody's story at like its core and talk about like their highs and lows, their journey, what made them who they are today. And I think it's such a beautiful thing, storytelling. Like the absolute power of it is just been one of the most incredible lessons like I've learned from doing this. But you are 100% right. You kind of have to vet the people who you are talking to at the same time, don't you? You know,
Yeah.
you have to, and that goes both ways. Like if you're a prospective guest reaching out to a podcast, you kind of have to like look into the podcast a bit. And if you know,
Mhm.
then obviously that goes the other way around. And then if you are a host looking into a guest, you kind of have to, there has to be that level of interest. Because at the end of the day, as a host, when you interview people as a host, you're doing it for you because you want to hear their story as well. That's a huge part of it. As much as you want their story to be told to hear of the world, you want to hear it yourself
Yeah.
because there has to be that level of interest. That just is the way it goes.
I think curious people make really good hosts because they're digging for themselves. And then the byproduct of that for the audience is the value that comes from the conversation. Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
100%.
100%. It's funny you say that because like whenever my mother talks about like me when I was growing up, everything was why? 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 So some 30 years later, it's like, here we go. It's a nice full circle moment where it's like, here we go. I'm finally getting my curiosity out there. I'm finally finding out why.
Well, you're in the right space,
Yeah,
Andy. You're in the
exactly.
right space for sure. Mm.
So I wanted to touch on another thing as well. So like you've gone on record to say, and I find this line probably one of the more powerful things I've ever heard. Some people find rock bottom. I found out that rock bottom had a basement. Now, that line itself is, I have never heard anything like that before. And I myself is somebody who I feel like I've hit rock bottom before. But at what point do you sort of realize like things actually feel worse than how you could have imagined?
So my rock bottom was when my girlfriend sat me down and said, "Hey, I was going to leave, but I thought you might kill yourself." That was my rock bottom. I didn't think you could get any lower than that.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, I started the podcast. I'm in love with podcasting. Love it. And overnight, I essentially start to hate my job because I know the money is not the solution to all of my
Mm-hmm.
problems. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job site early. I start showing up late. I felt like I had to pick between these two worlds of podcasting and fulfillment and this thing that I'm doing in money. And I just kept getting more homesick because my job required a ton of travel. So I
Yeah.
was always traveling. I would literally Monday through Friday be on the road. I'd get home Saturday morning. I'd throw my bag in the washer. I take it out, put it in the dryer, right back into the suitcase. That's how I lived for 10 months straight, essentially, of the year. So it got to the point where I was just super anxious and I was getting depressed and I felt like I had found my thing with podcasting, but I couldn't do it. And my mental health was going down the toilet. So eventually I was on the road for work one week. I remember I woke up in the hotel room. My alarm clock went off at 5:15 or 5:20. I sat up, I slid to the edge of the bed, was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one was on a different station. And it was, you're stuck here forever. You got lucky to get this job. You're never going to get an opportunity like this again. You can't leave. If you ever did leave, what would your friends think? I'm the most successful person in my friend group by far at this point. What would your family think? I am the most successful person in my family ever of all time. And then, do you really think you're going to be a podcaster? That's what we're going to do. We're going to leave this job and go all in on podcasting. So my rock bottom basement moment was sitting on the edge of that bed thinking to myself, well, if I just took my life, I would take all of my problems with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the rock bottom basement. Something has to change here because we
Yeah.
are moving in a very bad direction. And luckily I reached out to my business partner who was just a friend and he gave me some really good advice and I ended up leaving that job a few months later. But yeah, I mean, that was a really scary place to be because I trapped myself with the results that I had.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine a life starting over without those results. And that was a really hard journey for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think as well, like the notion of change, what you were kind of facing at the time, where you have this secure, well-paying job. On the side of it, you're doing something you love in podcasting, but it sounds as though that the fulfillment isn't quite there because you have so much going on at the same time, and it's like, well, what do I have to change? But do you change something you've just gotten into in terms of podcasting, or do you stick to something that is safe and secure but unfulfilling? It's how do you sort of, when you come to that crossroads, how do you make that decision ultimately and be like, do you know what? I'm just going to like take this risk. I'm going to take the plunge and follow my passions.
Somebody asked me to tell my story recently on a podcast, and this is also the beauty of telling your story. You learn about yourself. I realized I have a pattern. When I was 17, I worked at a gas station, and my goal was to fight mixed martial arts professionally.
Well,
So I had a job that paid the bills, and I had a passion that felt fulfilling. Tore my shoulder. Maybe this fighting thing isn't for me. Cool. I went and got a job at a hospital cleaning bathrooms and floors overnight. Well, I got my certification to be a personal trainer. The job paid the bills. Personal trainer was the fulfillment. That didn't work out. I was a truck driver and a forklift operator. And then I went to do the fire academy. Job paid the bills. Fire academy was for fulfillment. That has always been my pattern. And I have just quit jobs out of nowhere with no backup plan many times. So honestly, it wasn't as hard for me as it might have been for somebody else. It was the best way to explain it is imagine you're out there right now and you have something that you know if you could find a way to do full time, your life would be a dream.
yeah.
That's exactly how I felt about podcasting. So it was more, I feel like I probably had to get all the way to hell no and feel that pain in order to take the risk. But once I left, my mental health got so much better.
Yeah.
Like my depression went away almost immediately. Anxiety got drastically worse because I was so out of my element. But I think it was like, Kev, you've been really training for this your whole life. Every time you find something you're fulfilled doing, you kind of quit and you don't give it long enough. I was 27. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a mortgage. My car was paid off. If there was a time to do it, now is the time. And I think it was just an alignment of circumstance and an opportunity.
Yeah. Like, it is amazing to me how you can have so many different passions in life, but not all of them necessarily stick. But like, it doesn't necessarily take away the passion that you either did have for it or still do.
Mm.
But sometimes things just don't work out for whatever reason it may be. And like, I see a lot of myself in that in terms of like, because like I've been sort of having this kind of I don't want to say existential crisis in terms of career or not, like I don't think it's that bad, but more a case of maybe it's a sort of contentment thing where I'm like, well, if I can just do a job that pays the bills, I can supplement my passions and hobbies with that, and that kind of like works. But there is also like a part of me that kind of thinks, well, that only is only going to work for so long, especially when you do find something you feel like could become something. There's a I'm like, I mean, I can't really attest to it myself because like I still have like a 9 to 5 and I do this. But like, did you ever kind of feel at any point while you were doing the podcast, whilst working, like, was there ever just something, even if you couldn't explain it, that was like, this could be it. This could be the thing that takes me full time out of everything else I've tried before.
No, I mean, no. I wanted it to be, but
Yeah.
it was way more like I love this.
Yeah.
I didn't start this to make money. I didn't even know you in 2017, there was nobody was really making money with podcasting like they are today. So when I started, it was just if I could find a way to do
Mm-hmm.
that consistently, I'd be the most fulfilled person ever.
Yeah.
The only reason I left my job to do this full time is because of the mental health stuff. I wasn't consistent enough in the beginning as a podcaster. This is the truth. If I didn't leave my job, the podcast would have died for
Yeah.
sure. I would have quit. I would have quit if I didn't leave my job. That's the hard truth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And there is a lot of work that goes into podcasting. A
Oh yeah.
lot of work that goes into it, and it's all enjoyable. Like editing sometimes, but mostly more or less all enjoyable. More or less all, like this is the best part about it. Like 100%.
Yes. Yes.
And then going back, being able to re-listen to these, and the fact that these conversations, these stories, experiences, it's all out there for the world to hear. It's there forever. And that's like the kind of like best part about it. And it is a shame that there are so many that don't past that 4 or 5 episode, 10 episode threshold, and because like you know this yourself, everybody has their own voice, their own story to tell, and it's an absolutely, it's such a powerful tool that
It
sometimes
is.
people don't tap into as best as they can.
Well, this is an important lesson that I share because I want to be honest. The reason I didn't make any progress as a professional fighter is because I didn't really try hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I was not a successful firefighter is because I didn't do everything it took to be a successful firefighter. I just personal trainer, I wasn't willing to learn sales. I just wasn't willing to go all
Yeah.
in. I have never given nearly the amount to anything that I've given to the podcast. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've given everything I have, and that is the reason we've been successful because we burn the boats, and I'm not saying everybody should do this, but we burn the boats and all the mistakes I made from saying, well, it'd be really cool to be a fighter and then just not training. It's not going to work
Yeah.
because there's people out there that are training like their lives depend on it. And that's really what that is the level of seriousness that we have taken with the podcast. As of today, we've done even like 1,550 episodes in a row, 7 days a week without missing. And we don't intend on ever missing an episode. That's what we're signing up for. But I made a lot of mistakes with the other passions. I just wasn't passionate enough. And I think there's a lesson in that for everybody. That's a big piece. We
Yeah.
crunched the numbers today. I think we're in terms of episodes, I think we're ahead of 99.99% of podcasts or
Oh
something.
wow.
But I'm willing to bet we've also put in more effort than 99.99% of
Yeah.
podcasts. So it makes sense, right? At some point it has to line up.
Of course, yeah. Longevity is only kind of half the story. It's the effort
Yeah,
that goes into it, and
of
like,
course.
when you mention your other passions there as well, like it sounds as though, and I think this is a common thing. Like I've had this myself with previous passions. There's like a sort of fine line between being in love with the idea of something versus being in love with actually doing it, or there's maybe a sort of, even if it's not a balanced ratio, then it's it's just simply not going to work because take you want to fight MMA professionally, right? That's kind of, but if you weren't 100% committed into actually putting the work in, like I used to box when I was in my 20s, and I never wanted to go professional. I did everything I wanted to do out of it, I suppose, but I could have done it for longer, but it was just not that I didn't take it seriously, but I could have done more with it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I could have been more disciplined, but it was one of those things. It could have been something, but I did it because I enjoyed it. And then it kind of sort of it just stopped eventually. Just COVID had its say in that. But I completely understand what you mean. Like sometimes it just takes a few passions that don't necessarily work out for whatever reason it may be, whether it's down to that lack of accountability or whether it's down to circumstance. But sometimes you just find the right thing. And like you say, you never miss an episode because you can't imagine a day without releasing an episode.
No.
Like when it comes to that sort of thing, you can't like for me personally, I can't imagine a Sunday where there's no behind the camera.
Right.
Like that would like that. I had to do it once, like a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago, and I was like, "This sucks, man." This. I only do one a week. Like God knows what it's like for yourself doing it 7 days a week. I mean, and that kind of is testament to the work that you're putting into this, the work, the effort. Like, surpassing that 99.9%. Because of course you do get podcasts that do hit like the 1,000+, but then obviously we don't know what can't really speak for the quality of it. Like sometimes longevity works, but the effort that goes into it is a whole other thing.
I was the best man at a wedding a couple weeks ago. I recorded 3 episodes the morning of the wedding. I brought my equipment. I recorded 3 episodes before I went and put my tux on and helped my buddy get his tux on. I mean, that is the level. It's absolute mayhem. I think you probably said the most powerful thing. The idea of something. When the idea of something is sexier than the actual behavior of it, it's really cool to say I'm training to be a fighter. That is, people love that. They eat that. What? What? Really cool to say I went to the fire academy. And when I was going to the fire, really cool. in the beginning, it was not cool? Hey, I'm a podcaster. That was not cool at all. Nobody cared. I was broke. They didn't care. Now the idea of it is really cool and people love it. And I love it, which matters more than anything. But I think that's the most powerful thing that's been said this whole time. When the idea of something is sexier than the practice of something, you're in trouble for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to kind of be all into the idea and the execution. That's how you really make things work,
Yes, 100%.
Yes. Kevin, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Thank you so much for your time. It's been such an amazing conversation. I've had an absolute blast. Just before you round off, I would like to give you the floor just to plug yourself, to let the listeners know where they can find you.
Okay. I would say the podcast is called Next Level University. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on YouTube, new episode every day. My handle on Instagram is @NeverQuitKid. Even though based on this conversation, I've quit many things in the past. And then my email is kevin@nextleveluniverse.com. I do my own social media. I do my own emails. If I can be of value in any way, please do not hesitate to reach out. There are no stupid questions. I'm open for anything you got. So yeah, and I appreciate you. This has been a wonderful chat. I very much enjoyed our time together.
Likewise. Thank you so much again, Kevin. Been an absolute pleasure. And yes, take care. Thanks again.
Of course.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 58 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Massive thank you to Kevin Palmieri for sharing his story today and highlighting the importance of mental health, especially in times where it feels like there's no way back. Always an incredibly important topic to discuss at any time. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, my link tree in the About section has everything from socials, merch, website, all of the good stuff. Follow, rating, share, all goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.